All right, so come on up. Greg Franklin with Intellect Partners and Jonathan with Violin Memory. We're going to have an interesting discussion here about new innovation, which was actually indicated in the previous slide as part of infrastructure as a service, but the notion of using flash in infrastructure and data centers. So with that, let's see. I go through to my notes on the subject, but let's start off with an introduction. And but if we're going to start off with Greg, and tell us a little bit about yourself, Greg. What your role is, because it's kind of a two-hat role. So let's go past that so everybody understands you.
Well, thanks, Derek, and appreciate you inviting us to be part of the session today. So, yeah, I've basically been in this business of, I call it business ecosystem formation. It's really a partnership form of investing, and it's a way really to bring together sources of disruptive innovation, which typically come from small companies, and then find a way through a partnership structure to embed it in the whole telecom value chain. So by that I mean, even though I spend most of my time with carriers and the carrier community, you can't really be effective, I don't think, in our business at the carrier level without really understanding all the forms of disruptive innovation, which may take place all the way back to semiconductor IP. So it's where the Qualcomms and the Intels and the Broadcoms and the TIs start. So basically, I straddle that value chain every day. I spend my life running up and down that whole value chain, looking out for disruptive innovation and then figuring out how different, elements or parties on that value chain actually can capitalize on disruptive innovation.
And although you're not an employee of TeliSonera, you manage a fund of theirs to kind of, when you find something you think is disruptive and important for telecom, you're able to invest.
Right. I run a dedicated strategic fund for TeliSonera, focused on not just the identification of disruptive innovation, but then, for those that know me, I'm pretty hands-on. I don't do that many deals, but I really get stuck into them. I roll up my sleeves and do a lot of hard work alongside my management teams to make sure that we find the way to actually get that innovation implanted in the value chain, such that all parties can actually benefit and take it, get the benefit of the innovation.
You actually then kind of wear three hats. You have the Silicon Valley VC hat, and then you have the TeliSonera investor hat, and then I think what we see you do when you get in with a startup, you kind of take on the advocate and the evangelist role.
Well, I do a lot of had a lot of experience and. I have a lot of bullet holes and arrows in my back, and I always joke and tell people when I started in telecom, my hair color was brown. But basically, I get involved a lot of times in the go-to-market strategies, because as I think some of the thematic comments throughout the day is, telecom space is just it's just enormous, and so the opportunity set is very, very large, but it's a very, very challenging value chain to penetrate, and it takes a lot of work, and you can be very successful. I often point to a little company, Canadian company, and one of your compatriots there, RIM.
Yeah, my hometown.
Your hometown, right. So, RIM BlackBerry, basically in the space of 6 or 7 years, this small Canadian company basically, generated $50 billion worth of shareholder value.
After I'd left town, unfortunately.
After you left town. But $50 billion worth of shareholder value in less than 6 or 7 years with only 13 million customers. That's with an M.
Yeah.
So, it shows you that if you figure out actually how to thread the needle, you can have a very, very spectacular result.
So let's flip over to Jonathan. Jonathan, you just recently joined Violin. Tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about Violin, where you were before and what you're doing now.
Okay, so I'm the CTO of software. I've been here about 3 months now. I was most recently at LSI. I was one of the LSI fellows, working sort of across storage and networking and silicon. So of course I've been exposed to the telecom industry through our Axia platform and base station on a chip. And I've been spending a lot of energy for many years now looking at how flash is going to totally disrupt the tier 1 storage. Similar to the end of the last talk is, flash is really coming to in the enterprise. It was driven by the consumer devices, but now it's at the enterprise. And so Violin really attracted me, saying, this company really has what people are looking for.
So then tell us, what specifically is the product that Violin has that people are looking for? What's the value proposition? Is it reliable enough to do the job it's set out to do?
So basically, we are a network-attached flash memory array. So we're focused on instead of going after the cards, the flash cards and SSDs, we went for people who wanted larger scale. I mean, the goal is, last talk was, well, EMC is the tier 1 storage vendor, and they are a great tier 1 storage vendor, but they're all on disk, they're all on hard drives. They spent decades making that perfectly reliable or extremely reliable. But flash, just changes everything. The tier 1 systems of the enterprise are all going to be flash in the next couple of years. And we have customers like AOL, they're on their 4th buying cycle. They're a long-term happy EMC customer. And they're making Violin their flash 1, their tier 1 storage system.
So where do people deploy flash and what uses versus spinning media?
So the advantage of flash is that random access and sequential access are about the same. They're effectively the same. So I've worked in file systems for Microsoft, for example, and IBM. We spent decades trying to figure out how to get rid of random access. Databases, analytics, these are random access applications. Yep. Virtualization, VMware. The more you put more virtual machines on the same physical box, the more random I/O you have. Flash just, it's got a fantastic dollar per IOP story.
And when you get a spinning disk, you get the spinning media and an arm reading it, and you have to physically move an arm to read a different sector.
Exactly. Think of the difference as being, instead of an I/O taking 5 milliseconds, it'll take 50 microseconds.
Yep.
So, Violin is more, we're focused on millions of I/Os per rack.
It's like I think that when you went from vacuum tubes to transistors, you took out the moving parts and the physical parts, and you went to something electronic. You're kind of doing the same thing for storage.
Exactly. So you think about where hard disks have been. They've been on this amazing trajectory, beyond Moore's law in terms of storage capacity. But the actual performance of storage has been going down. And certainly the performance per terabyte has gone way down. So flash is more like Moore's law for storage performance. So you've got your multi-core servers, your DRAM, that's on Moore's law. This is Moore's law for storage performance.
So, the nature of this conversation is we've teed up and we had we talked about what we were going to say before, and this is the tough discussion, I think, of the day, because we had a lot of cases that are slam dunks. There were deals that were previously made, and I think Violin has been kind enough to come up and say, hey, listen, we'll be the company that comes in and talks about the arrows in our back. And despite the fact that you have some pretty good, I think because you have a lot of good progress outside of the telecom space, and you're anticipating a great future in telecom, but thus far it hasn't all been rosy. So maybe I'll ask Greg to talk about that a little bit, and because let's make it clear, the purpose of this is not to, as Greg has said and I've said on the phone, everybody knows it's not here to beat up on anyone in telcos in particular, but it's to discuss the challenges that some startups have had, and best ways of maybe fixing those challenges and gaps.
Sure. Well, before we get into that, I think that, to convert a lot of what Jonathan's been saying, essentially this is a breakthrough disruptive technology, this class of technology, enterprise flash. Violin's found a way to architect it in a form factor that delivers 5 and pretty soon 6 nines reliability. At the same time, it's driving. Basically, I look for disruptive technology that does 2 things simultaneously. One is dramatically improves customer experience on the network. And at the same time, potentially delivers game-changing cost reduction. And this thing hits the crosshairs of both those, which is why it's a very, very exciting technology and is enormously relevant. I predict it's going to transform network infrastructure over the next 2 to 3 to 5 to 10 years. When you can drive the cost of electricity down 90%, take up 90% of the space of a traditional storage in a data center. It's almost like the story that's too good to be true. Yeah. So, so getting on to your point, because I always joke with Derek that I think I drew the short straw on this the session this afternoon. So, on behalf of Telecom, I made an investment in this company in March of last year, March 2010. And we sponsored it into the Telecom Council, and it gave a presentation to June, the summer meeting. So last June, I think there were there were 10 operators in the room and 5 major OEM partners who heard the presentation, so 15 in total. So what's been interesting, and then interestingly enough, Violin actually succeeded in being nominated for 3 Telecom Council award categories last year and won 2. And I think that may have happened once before in the history of the council. Yep. So the representatives of the value chain that saw the presentation and were socialized about Violin really understood the value. But the interesting statistic is, after 15 months and all these accolades and recognition that Violin has received, we haven't really scored, the company hasn't scored a single trial with one of those 15 organizations that seemed to be pretty happy with what they heard at the presentation.
And to be clear, the Telecom Council isn't the only organization that's giving you guys awards, right?
Yeah, true. We've gotten awards from Gartner, Lead 411, and most recently, which was kind of amazing, we got the Always On Global Company of the Year.
Congrats.
Which is, you look at the people who've won it, it's only about 8 years they've had it. So it's Google, YouTube, Skype, Facebook, Twitter. We beat out companies like Zynga, all these major companies. And thing to note is we are not VC backed. We're the only non-VC backed company who's ever come close to winning that award.
So, I mean, the notion we're trying to get is that there's a fairly wide consensus that this is a company that has a lot of upside, and your point is that despite that, you haven't gotten to the trial stage. So what do you see as the reason behind that, and what can be done to kind of, because this isn't the only company that has a lot of potential that might be having trouble. So what are the ways that the community can fix that problem?
Well, it's not for me to fix other people. but I've been doing this a long time, and I think that, it's been pointed out today that these startup companies are dealing with really, behemoths. And, I was reminded this morning, Verizon has 80,000 employees just in their mobile company and a couple of 100,000 in the Verizon fixed network. So you're dealing with essentially cities and countries, these little startup companies. And it's really a size disparity issue, and I think so. Therefore, so I think one really simple solution, which is hard to implement. I mean, it's all about organizational design. It's the organizational design and the processes by which you get innovation into these large companies. Because with globalization, we've had this massive consolidation of the operator community and the supply chain behind it. And so basically, everybody's sort of consolidating up to very, very, very large companies, and that makes it harder and harder and harder to get things done. So I don't think it's unique to Violin. I think it's a pervasive problem, and I think it can be solved with a good old dose of high-powered organizational design and effectiveness.
Yep. I think, as you said, you think the local people have identified and said, hey, look, this looks interesting for my head office.
Yeah, the front end of the front end of the value chain through the council obviously did a really good job of identifying, this is a great high potential disruptive technology, but it's really the kind of let's call it the back end that's let the process down.
So getting it through to the proof of concept is actually extremely challenging.
Is it very difficult to test your solution? Is that one of the problems?
No, that's the thing is we have proof of concepts that go, people are just amazed. Take a couple of weeks, things install in a couple, an hour, it's up and going, and you see your Oracle get 10 times faster, and then they sign. Well, first, of course, they go to make sure that everything really is hot swappable, and they can pull everything out, and it still keeps running. But after that, we're in major financial, Wall Street, healthcare, people who have very low tolerance for risk.
Yep.
And we don't have the difficulties that we have in telecom.
So what is the mean time to failure and stuff of your equipment versus a spinning disk? Is that one of the things?
So this thing is just intended to stay up indefinitely. There's no moving parts but the fans.
Yep.
It has internal spares. So if anything is, the nature of flash is it's not moving around, so it doesn't fail hard.
Yep.
We have analytics in there, so we can determine if it's degrading, or if there's whole card level failures. We just swap in. There's 4 spare cards inside, so you won't even notice that.
The bottom line is it's 5 9s, and the next version is going to be 6 9s. So that's really all you have to know about.
Right.
I mean, if you want to know the nitty gritty, that's fine. But 5 9 is going to 6 9s, so it's definitely telecom class equipment.
Yep.
Plus,
the other advantage against disks is disks. Most failures, people realize, the smart bits don't catch. With flash, this is solid state media. You can detect if something's degrading, just like you can in anything else in telco.
I see. So you're saying it actually has a softer drop off than the
Absolutely, and you can find out things are degrading. We'll take it out of service automatically, but we'll let you know that that's happened.
It's a little more warning time, which is useful.
Exactly. Right. It's all meant for, this group really a lot of them came from the Tandem sort of nonstop server farm. So it's not just HA, it's intended to be fault tolerant.
What I love about it is the kind of exponential benefit that flash media offers in terms of it's no moving parts, therefore less heat generation and less power use. And less power use means less heat generation. Less heat generation means less air conditioning, which means less power use. Yep. So you just kind of get these circular benefits. So great. What kind of impact do you have on power consumption in a data center?
Well, so think of like an Oracle database. In order to get equivalent performance from Oracle, one of our arrays, you need 2,000 disks, spinning disks. Wow. So say 50 to 100 to 1.
Yeah. So you can take the
and just think of the floor space. Yeah. The folks at AOL always say there's nothing more expensive than space and power you don't have.
Right. So, I mean, this is a touchy situation. So, you said that one of the things you can do is the front end is doing this job well, but we need better processes put in place. Through the day, we're hearing about people putting in, more and more processes, and a lot of them are quite recent. But do you think that the steps are being taken in the right direction? Are we going the right way? I mean,
well, I think
I'm pretty
so. I mean, the
confident,
Verizon guys were saying they've, sort of described how, decision making's been elevated up to high levels. So that's one way to do it. I mean, when you've got a company with 300,000 people, I mean, it's not easy to manage, right?
Right.
But I mean, the problem with the dilemma that the telecom industry has predominantly, I think, is that it's an enormously capital-intensive industry.
Yep.
If you're in mobile, you pay a fortune for a spectrum, you pay a fortune for infrastructure, and basically, at the end of the day, you're differentiating on price. So, I buy from, I may buy because I'm dissatisfied with my coverage, whatever, but fundamentally, it's price differentiation in an enormously capital-intensive environment. So that's a very awkward and undesirable sort of business to be in. So it's a tough business. But I think if the company's really serious about tapping into disruptive innovation, they've got to do a lot of work on organizational design at the back end, and then and I think there's movement in that direction. And then there's companies here, which was really refreshing to hear the last presentation. But you have that luxury when you only have 600 people in your company, and because of consolidation, the telcos are dealing with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands.
Yep. So, Jonathan, what for a phone company, what are some of the ways they could implement your solutions? Where would they put it? How would they be using it?
So there's a number of places. So usually we look at people, say, anywhere where you have servers that are sitting in an I/O wait. Now, that's the most level thing. But so we have a lot of traction in Oracle, any database really, MySQL, any of these databases. Yep. We also, the VMware, that sort of, as you saw the last one, the infrastructure as a service.
Yep.
As you virtualize, as servers, as you create more and more virtual machines to more, fewer physical servers, you're increasing random I/O, and Flash is a huge win there. Yep. But in the so that's part of the back office. But the other areas really are, if you run analytics closer to the edge of the network.
Yeah.
You can't bring. There's too much call record data. There's too much. You can't bring it to the central place without losing most of the data, because the pipes just aren't big enough. Mm-hmm. But if you could move those analytics towards the metro, maybe to the macro, then to the metro, and then maybe sub-metro, doing traffic shaping, doing caching. Mm-hmm. One of the things I've looked at seriously is to have almost called like a micro content delivery network closer to the edge of the network. I mean, you're not going to have it in the base station, but closer.
So you could fit in a smaller, like you could fit in a cabinet or a box. Or
exactly, but you would never put something with spinning disks out in the field.
In a remote box, yeah.
Yeah, so if you think about customer experience, right? So when I hit that button on the smartphone or the pad, I want that content now. So there's not so much congestion, in the network these days that basically, so my vision of the network is, I don't know how long it'll take, 2 to 5 years, maybe 10 years. Basically, the most frequently accessed content will be cached right next to the base station, right? Yep. And my prediction is that, high availability enterprise flash type of devices are going to be the media upon which all this content is going to be stored. Yep. And it's such a fundamentally enabling technology. It's actually going to have a myriad of applications and uses in and throughout the network.
And a lot of partners bringing those solutions to market, right? I mean, if you guys put some hardware in more towards the edge, not every tower, but maybe the base station controller area.
Exactly.
Somebody else is going to come along with the caching solutions and the new, the edge storage networks and the optimization technologies, the video transcoding technology. I mean, there'll be lots of people.
Well, just also imagine the people who provide services. I mean, we talk about Netflix of wiping out the national network in terms of bandwidth every night. Mm-hmm. But imagine Netflix having a premium plan where they get their content, their top content, closer to the edge of the network. It doesn't even just have to be wireless. Mm-hmm. But a lot of us are watching things on the iPhone or smartphones, certainly.
And the same things.
And even if everybody's watching the same movie, if you're out of, you didn't start all at the same moment, and that looks like random I/O to a disk, and it means nothing to Flash.
Mm-hmm. Great. So I'll also like earlier we had France Telecom or Orange now with Truviso, and they were talking about real time, taking massive amounts of data and whipping through it and coming up with real-time solutions. So is that, is this kind of something that would shine even better on top of your platform?
Absolutely. We've already talked about, we're going to connect up afterwards.
Excellent.
There's a natural fit there, because even if you're doing real-time analytics where you don't have to store things, most part, you do need history. I mean, and one of the things about the telcos is just because you can have real-time analytics doesn't mean you can do something with it.
Yeah.
but being able to store terabytes or tens of terabytes of things on extremely fast media with 5 or 6 nines of availability, and not having it to be in the machine room, so you don't have to move it over the backhaul network. That's a huge deal.
Well, the real-time analytics is a huge opportunity, basically because not just for network operation and control and responsive. In real time, you've got to adjust the network, optimize your spectrum, and improve the customer experience on the fly. And at the same time, you have an opportunity actually to really generate real-time information. I think the examples were given this morning by Gabrielle about real-time information about customer information, and you can respond to that, provide services. I mean, the sky's really the sky's the limit. It's just, we just need to, basically hunker down, find some people willing to spend some time, and try out some of the things, as Jonathan explains, within 5 to 10 working days you can prove this. I mean, Taylor Sonera in our systems integration group, we put a Violin machine to work, and within a couple of days we've already demonstrated we can accelerate databases 10, 20, 30 times. Well, you imagine the amount of money carriers can save on Oracle licenses if you can run your databases 10, 30, 40, 50 times faster.
Just imagine, from a caching solution, that in 3U you could put 40 terabytes of storage that is, 70 microsecond latency.
So you're paying, that's huge. But to Greg's point, you're paying for Oracle basically license per machine. Now you can consolidate down.
Actually, Oracle's moving to license per core.
I see.
Right. When I took the value proposition of Violin, I made a specific visit to the software procurement officer who reports into the group CIO. When I described the Violin value proposition, his mouth was watering.
Yeah. Phenomenal.
So it's not just a performance value add; it's also a cost reduction potential.
Yeah, in terms of licenses and everything else. We should also point out we have the TPC. We have a number of records as well. So we have the TPC-E, the TPC-C, both of those records with HP and Microsoft.
I don't know what that is. What are those records?
So these are database. One's like an OLTP transaction record. Another one is more of an basically they're transactions per second, transactions per minute records.
It's a technical performance record on a particular use case.
Yep.
But in addition to that, they've also broken records in terms of TPMs, dollars per TPM. So it's not just technical performance; it's economic performance as well. World records. So. And
then we also start talking about benchmarks like IBM's GPFS. We've broken that record too.
So we moved we can bring up the lights and we'll go to Q&A and I'll ask one more question. If anybody else out there has a question, Telecom Sonera, Greg, or Violin, please raise your hand. What exactly are you selling? Are you selling the box? Are you selling the memory? Is it like a drive?
We sell the box. I mean, it's an appliance. It's connected through either PCIe, fiber channel, or iSCSI, and shortly InfiniBand. So we're neutral to how you connect it.
Is there any software involved, or is it pretty much just...
So it's inside the box. I mean, you don't really have to manage
it would appear, like you just plug it in and
you plug it in, you could see LUNs. Yeah. I mean, it looks... So it's easy to attach. There is a host driver if you want to connect it directly to PCIe for the absolute lowest possible latency.
Yeah.
But most enterprises are IP or fiber channel.
Yeah.
And the only downside about the direct connect is it's very hard to find a server that can peg this box. So if you direct connect it, it better be a really big server.
Nice. So any hands up in there, Stephanie? We got one question back here.
Hi. I wonder if you could give us some idea of the entry-level price point for your smallest box?
Let's see. The smallest one is probably about 80,000. I think that's about right. So we allow you to partially populate boxes. I think that's like a 2 terabyte box, something on that order. I mean, I think we're at the lowest end. It's probably about $25 a gigabyte.
Yeah, and so that's a traditional. That's a very, traditional question to ask about a storage company. So I think a paradigm shift of thinking about how you can put this to work is think about TCO, total cost of operation, compared to what you might have to do in hard disk to achieve the same result. But more importantly, think more about dollars per IOPS, right? Not dollars per gig, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you can't beat flash. I mean, the price of flash has come down 600 times in the last decade. Really? 600 times. It's the fastest price decline in the history of technology, this material. I'm not talking about Violin, I'm just talking about flash memory in general. And, so it's come down 650 times. Disk storage has come down the same time period 40 times.
But
So-
disk is still cheaper off
Oh,
the
so,
top.
so disk is a capacity tier.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't care about performance and all you care about is archival storage, you
Yep.
can't beat disk except for
Right.
maybe tape. But if you're talking about if you want to make your database work, or you want to make your virtualization solution, if you want 10 virtual machines on a physical box, you can't really do that well with disk.
Right.
I mean, you spend 80% of your time in waiting for I/O. So you've paid all that money for the server, you've paid all those Oracle licenses, the VMware licenses,
Right, and you're waiting for
and
I/O.
you're waiting for I/O.
Okay, great. Question from John over here. John, how about yell it out and I'll repeat it.
Sure. Well, I'll first speak to Greg's tenacity in stumping on your behalf. So you've done well.
So he giving props for Greg's tenacity.
So who are your resellers typically? You mentioned Wall Street and healthcare. Who sells on your behalf?
So a big announcement is HP is now a Violin OEM. So we have resellers, but HP is the big OEM.
Pretty good.
Thank
A
you.
little company.
That'll open you a few accounts, probably.
Yeah, that'll take our 15 sales guys to 14,000.
And we'll take a question up here in the center, the rear.
Yeah, question you mentioned.
Well, the mic's almost at you, so we'll wait for it. Thanks.
You mentioned about caching in the base station. So NAND has its own issues of reliability and how many read-write cycles. And
Yep.
in that application, you're doing a lot of reads and writes.
So that.
So
Boy, you're just lobbing one up for me. So one of
How
our
does that
key
play?
intellectual pieces of property is, we have patents that are hopefully close to being delivered, since they're like 5 years old. Is we did all the technology to manage it as a system, so you don't get the same failure modes as SSDs. I mean, we still have the same write cycles, but we're able to load spread it across a lot of chips. So for us, for example, think about, well, I don't know if you've ever run a database, but one of the challenges database people have is trying to performance balance everything and make sure that no two applications fight for the same disk arms. All of that goes away. We amortize all the performance and all the wear leveling, all the reliability across thousands of chips. So we give, for our SLC product, for example, the model is you could write the entire, say, 10 terabytes, say you bought a 10 terabyte system. You could write the entire thing every hour of every day for 5 years. That's how we do the lifetime of that box.
Is that the 5 nines or the 6 nines? Is that the current?
No, that's the current system. That's the one we have been shipping for years.
I have one comment to make, which is much more generic, and I think to the point of this particular forum is that another success attribute of this whole process that we're engaged in this room is partnership making and partnership making skills.
Yep.
I mean that is really, really critical to I've been doing this a long time, and it's very clear that partnership making skills are actually, generally speaking, corporate partnerships are not very well done. And I think, the way I think about it, and what I do is partnership making is the new IP. If you do partnership making really, really well, because the days are over when you can pretty much do like what Steve Jobs did at the beginning, which build a fully functional computer company, right? You have to figure out what is your disruptive, differentiation and solution, focus on it, and then partner like crazy to create a global time-to-market, hypersensitive business model that works right away, because product life cycles are so short, you don't have the luxury of doing anything else except identifying domain expertise that you vitally need to create a global business model and implement and execute on that partnership. And so the partnership making skill is, I believe, say it again, I think it's the new IP.
So this session specifically was addressing the fact that it's not perfect yet. So are we getting there, Greg? Are we going to be able to
Well, I think it's.
the
I think it's a differentiating success factor for introducing disruptive technology, which traditionally, really comes from small company environment. Typically, small companies are the most agile, prolific, efficient producers of disruptive technology. So if the larger companies, the global companies, want to access that efficiently, it all comes down to how well you do partnerships.
I think the lessons by the big companies, frankly, are being learned by having missed some opportunities, and seeing them go over the top or just go away. Being driver of location-based services, being the driver of mobile email and things like that. And I think you pulled up a few of those yourself. And I think every one of those that they miss, and the head office say, how do we miss that? it was because we tried to do it ourselves instead of partner with.
Well, we
investment
talked
grade
about
stuff.
RIM, mobile email, $50 billion shareholder value creation in 7 years. Some little company in Canada
Yeah,
does it.
could have been a telco.
It should have been owned
Yeah.
by a telco or someone in the telco value chain.
Now, they did participate, which is good for the
You know,
budget.
look what Steve Jobs did. He basically eviscerated the whole opportunity carriers had to monetize mobile apps.
Yep.
That's really their business.
Yep.
It's been taken away.
So I think that's part of the learning process. So in 3 years, so it's 2014. Is the Violin of 3 years from now going to also, wait a full year before they maybe get capture the attention of the telecom industry, or is it going to be better? Are we going to be better?
I think if you look at what's happening, I think it's going to improve. I mean, look, there's serious money being committed by operators. I mean, last year we had Singtel's $150 million fund. I mean, that's clearly a very high-level, board-level decision at Singtel. Rogers, similar commitment, $150 million venture money. So I think the people at that level of those organizations are savvy enough to realize they need to do a couple of things. They need not only do you need to throw money at things, you need the organizational design and effectiveness to be able to implement, and then you've got to implement on the partnerships to successfully bring those new ideas into the mothership.
Yep. And fortunately for you guys, you've had other lines of revenue and other enterprises you've sold into on the telco, so you've been able to last this long time.
Oh yeah, we were on the we're on the vertical rise of revenue.
Yep.
Even that was before HP. Now with HP as OEM, it's going to.
So you'll still be around when we.
It's definitely a rocket ship.
Yeah, sounds great. So with that, I think I'd like to wrap up the panel. I'd like to thank a lot, Jonathan and Greg, for taking on this kind of difficult, what's not working part of the discussion. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.